Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to like this video. And don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. Here's the front page of the channel. The bottom arrow is pointing at the subscribe button that's normally red until you click on it, and this one turns white after you subscribe. And the top arrow is pointing to the bell. Now, the bell doesn't show up until after you click the subscribe button, and then the bell will show up, and that way you can be notified of new uploads. Our blog is texasrepublic.wordpress.com. Our website is thetexasrepublic.com. Our email address is oneyellowroseenterprises@gmail.com. Our YouTube profile is, this is the link, because YouTube doesn't allow us to have a customized URL until we have over a certain number of subscribers. And follow us on Twitter at Texas Republic for You and at We Are Texians. Check out our other videos and playlists. Republic of Texas RT documentary. Texas and other American states is under a military occupation. The Republic of Texas Forum of 2016. And describe the kind of people who would thrive in independent Texas.
See that? Well, I'd love to see your computer where I can put a cursor on the stuff I'm talking about, but I guess I can do it from here. Okay. What's that?
Put a tarp strap on it and hold it over.
Tarp strap.
There you go.
Is that a tarp strap?
Yeah, that's what it is.
All right. My name is Bonnie Thomas, and these are my recommendations for making some revisions and improvements to the wording of our present Constitution.
There it is.
And I'm going to start with on the where it says as amended, right here, every living soul my wording recommendation is where it says every living. I would just change it to live. I know it means the same thing, and the reason why I'm doing that is because the next sentence or the next few words over, I don't want it to be redundant. Where if it were to read, every live soul having declared a domicile, I would remove having declared a domicile and just put living there. Because, you know, a domicile is one of their tricky words that puts you in their jurisdiction. They use things like domicile and resident, stuff like that. So I would change it where having declared a domicile is removed and the word living is put in its place.
Living on the lands of Texas.
Yes, because I think that more appropriately defines what we want it to say without using their jurisdictional words that have additional meanings that we don't want them to mean.
Where's that chance at a presumption?
Yeah,
What about using the word inhabitants?
it's the same thing.
That's one of their
It's
words.
one of their words.
Okay.
Resident, inhabitant, domicile. But if we change it to living, because remember, we're working against the operation of the dead. They operate in the dead world. Everything is dead. It's a satanic world. So anytime you're using live or living, it's going to be complete opposite of their de facto world. So we always want to operate in the living. So I would definitely change that wording. When we go down to section 8, right here. I really don't like the word citizen, and I know maybe you do.
No.
But I would omit the word citizens and change it to souls, because remember, souls are alive. And again, same reason, we're going up against a dead world, and we have to establish that we're a live soul. Yes, sir.
Well, this paragraph is talking about elections. So, should we make them electors?
Well, respectively
I mean,
chosen
that's one of their
was
words.
another one of my words, is respectively chosen. Isn't this an elected position? So, should we change the chosen to elected? Yes or no? Those are questions that I have on this particular paragraph, is to get rid of the word citizens, put souls, and change elected or chosen to elected. Are those elected positions or are they chosen positions? That's my question. Those would be some revisions that I'd like to see. Okay, moving on. Second page.
There's a bunch of things in that one that need to change, but we have to look at the whole thing because it's talking about senators, and the Senate is
Chosen.
a fiction.
Right?
And so then,
Are they? In the
well,
du
the
jour,
Senate,
in the du jour, it's still a fiction? Or are we living souls?
it's still a fiction, yeah, but the question is whether it's a corporation or a trust. You see what I'm saying? I mean, if it's a corporation, then it's, you know, that's why I would prefer making it, I mean, if you read, you know, the court cases, it says that the original Constitution is a trust indenture, basically. See what I'm saying? And what they did is they set up a separate entity because it was a problem for them. See what I'm saying? And the other entity is a for-profit corporation that's not even owned by. And so I don't have a problem. You know, that's why we need to really look at the reside in the district. You know, that might be. I mean, it is senators. It is it's. I don't know. We need to look at a lot of words in there. Quite frankly.
I still say, you know, when you have a Republican form of government, you've got people, men and women, who are respectively, fundamentally, fiduciarily acting for the benefit of other men and women. So I don't necessarily see it as a corporate position.
That's more of a trust.
I see it as more of men and women representing men and women, which, you know, when you stay out of the dead world, I think it's just better off for everyone. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. Yes, Bruce?
I think you might want to think about this thing of changing words like Senate in here, because we're going to end up having to go back and change it in the Constitution everywhere. If we start redefining words, we're going to be in real trouble. Now, there's some words, like you're saying, we can gradually fade into it, but I'm concerned about words like Senate, or trying to change that.
Right. Because we have a de facto and we already have a preconceived idea of what a senator does, or a congressman, or a representative, or the executive branch, it does mirror and look a lot like the de facto. So, however we change that wording, it's a totally separate topic. I'm trying to just fine tune it for now with some details. Okay, moving on to section 10.
What I think that, you know, we should do is we got to look at something simple. An amendment's supposed to be short and sweet. It's going to amend just one little part, and so we should try and do something that's simple and that does what we want it to do. Now, B.J. Picasso's got his hand up too. If we go through and try and change every word in this thing, that's a huge job.
Right.
And
so we can always do that at a later time.
We could amend it by basically saying that something like the Constitution is a trust indenture, and it's not a corporation, not a corporate document. I mean, something simple that further defines what all this is going on in here. But PJ Picasso's got his hand up, so that's Ken Barnett. I think he wants to talk. So go ahead, Ken. Bruce says go ahead and let you talk.
This is Mr. Barnett. That particular paragraph, the topic under discussion for amendment right now is amending the Constitution to make our affidavit lawful. There's lots of verbiage that really needs to be changed in the Constitution, and we need to amend that over time. But right now, the specific amendment we're looking at is amending the Constitution to make our current affidavit lawful. I yield.
That's a good point. So we appreciate looking at all this stuff, but yeah, that's really the topic of where we need to keep focused on. Otherwise, we could be going. This could take forever going through this thing.
Well, it's only 11 pages, right? Or is it? Yeah, 11. Okay, one additional thing I missed on number 4. It says no person shall be eligible, blah, blah, blah. Shall be a citizen of the Republic. I would like to change that to live in or live on the land of the Republic of Texas. Live on the land. And that's in section number 4. Yes, Ron?
Can you just go through and say like every place that mentions citizen, change it to living soul or soul?
Yes, we could do, yes, we could do that.
And that way you don't have to go through each one.
Right.
And that way it'll pluck the whole thing. But and if you're going to read it, you don't want to go and read all of that person that be in there and then go later find an amendment that says, oh, well, unread that. Take all that out.
Right.
Actually, that's not a bad idea. Make a glossary for the Constitution.
Right.
These are the definitions, these words that are used in this Constitution, how they shall be used.
I've got a lexicon that
Yeah.
you can also.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that just, it's the same word, but now it's our own definition.
Right.
So I've got a, yes, Bill?
That's what the facto says.
Yes, Mr. Fuller?
That's exactly what I was about to say. Mr. Moore and Mr. Wilson put together a lexicon
Yeah. I've
years
got it.
ago for us to use for that very specific purpose.
Right.
So I think that's a whole lot easier than trying to amend the Constitution.
Very much so.
This is what it means.
Yes. But again, we're operating against the presumption of their words in the de facto, so I'm not opposed to changing those words.
Right.
But yeah, because their lexicon's different from our lexicon, right? But if you change the words, they can't say a living soul means a dead soul later on. Yes, Bruce?
But our Constitution has nothing to do with the de facto. It has to do with controlling this government.
No, I agree. But sadly, as you well know, we are always interfacing with the de facto, which is part of the world we live in. We can't go out into the world and not interface with the de facto, because right now the de facto is the majority and we're the minority. Moving on to section number 10. It's lower here. Where'd Glenn go? Glenn! See if I can play with his computer. By the way, you see the word in yellow has already been removed. If it's highlighted in yellow, it's already been removed from the Constitution. In number 10, I have a question about a separation of powers issue there, where it says, the Vice President of the Republic shall be President of the Senate. Well, to me, That's a little bit of a conflict of separation of powers issue, and that needs to change. That's what I would propose, and I'm open to, talk about that, how to propose it later, but we have a separation of powers problem, and if you don't know how valuable our separation of powers is right now with this COVID hoax, we're seeing Governor Abbott pretend to be a legislative branch and pretend to make laws, which he has no power to do. And so you've got somebody like mayors also implementing supposed penal codes that have never been passed by our legislature. And they're fining you if you walk in within 6 foot of another store shopper in Lowe's or Home Depot, and you're going to get a fine for $1,500 or 6 months in jail because a mayor thinks he has legislative power. So you see, the separation of powers is very important to keep the powers separate. Mayors don't have that authority. Governors don't have that. And we also should make sure that we separate the powers, because that's where danger can kick in. Yes, Bruce?
But the problem we have here with the de facto
Right.
is they aren't honoring their Constitution. They aren't living by their Constitution.
No.
If they were honoring that Constitution, if they were honoring their oath of office,
Right.
they would not be doing what they're doing.
I agree. Well, they're running a criminal Ponzi scheme. Yes, sir.
PJ Picasso has his hand up again. Should I tell him to go ahead and speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Ken, go ahead and speak.
It's Mr. Barnett. I've actually posted this very bill. And what I understand, I don't have any file the Congress. I'm scared to get yours, and part of the reason for that, I could give you for is because it allows everyone who is a senator and who is a representative, as long as it
Kate, you're breaking up on us, and it's difficult to understand what you're saying.
Someone gets one or someone in the it might unstable. If
We just lost him.
Ken,
We just lost him.
oh, he's gone?
Yeah.
He fell off. I couldn't understand what he was saying there.
I couldn't
He kept
either.
breaking up.
I couldn't.
He must have had a bad internet.
He's in a fringe zone.
If we lost him, his signal. Here he's back. Are you? You're kind.
I got that phone.
Is there somewhere you can stand where you get good signal?
No. I could drive downtown. No, what I was saying is I posed the same question myself because of the separation of powers between the executive and the legislative branch. And from what I understand, basically, is the fact that if someone from either the Senate or the House had to actually run the session, that person would not be allowed to vote. If I'm there running the session, I have nothing to say about anything that goes on. But if I'm running it, it gives every senator and representative the opportunity to vote on any issue. And I yield.
Entirely correct.
I've been, I've had the very same question myself. It's like, I'm part of the executive branch. Why am I in the Congress? That's the explanation as far as I can tell. I yield.
I think a glossary is really, because there's a lot of stuff and a glossary would be something that we can adopt as one thing, and it would change it completely. And I agree, there's like major issues with these words. I mean, we could, a constitution, if you look that up in a dictionary, it's a dead instrument. and we could just say in a glossary that it's not, and et cetera, you know. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff we could change. Ken, I guess, has something else he wants to say.
No, he just gave up
Yes.
the floor.
Again, we're getting off the subject. The subject is amending the Constitution to make our affidavit protexient lawful. This doesn't have anything to do with that. I appreciate all the effort that's been gone through to look through it and look at all the things that need to be changed, and there are a lot of things that need to be changed or amended. I believe the glossary idea is a great idea because then we have a definition of our word. Doesn't matter what somebody else chooses it to be. We have a definition. But the topic under discussion right now is amending the Constitution to make our current affidavit protexient a lawful instrument.
So,
I yield.
so we need to look at which particular section that affects the affidavit. And I know the president had an issue when he vetoed the last bill that was presented. You know, I can't remember exactly what his issue was, but I think that's a good place to start as far as what part of the Constitution needs to be looked at. Now, if, you know, and I hate to, you know, flog a dead horse, but if we can amend that part of the Constitution by putting in a glossary, then that would kill two birds with one stone. But at any rate, whatever. But we need to look specifically at the section that the president used as justification for vetoing the last bill, and then look at the whole thing and see what other areas in there need to be. But again, an amendment has to be very specific and only apply. Matter of fact, that in my YouTube videos, I have that the 14th Amendment's unconstitutional because it changes all sorts of stuff. It's not an amendment; it's actually a revision, and and it's unconstitutional for that reason. And so because it changes all sorts of things in the Constitution, but we need to look at everything in the Constitution that affects that we want to do with this affidavit. You know, anyways. I yield.
Okay, moving on. Page 2, number 13. And again, it says each house shall be the judge. My question is that it's kind of a poorly written statement. What does that mean, shall be the judge? Maybe that can be defined in the... Eloy, did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh.
All right.
Okay. And then dropping down to 16, this truly needs revision. It says each house may punish by imprisonment during the session any person, not a member, who shall be guilty of any disrespect to the house by any disorderly conduct in their presence. Well, hello. You're talking about a penal code crime that you're going to put somebody in jail. And what does any disrespect mean? What if I walk by and I'm trying to sneeze and I'm making a weird face because I'm trying to hold the sneeze back and you see me as giving you the stink eye? You know, I mean, what is disrespect? It's a broad and ambiguous term, and you can't be jailed for disrespect. Hello? I might be talking on an earbud to somebody and you're walking past me, and I might be hot-tempered to somebody on a phone conversation. You think it's applied to you. It's too broad and ambiguous term. You're talking about a jail sentence for disrespect. Really?
Mm-hmm.
That needs to be completely removed. Because, first of all, it's a due process problem. Right? We all are entitled to due process. You shall not lose life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And all of a sudden, somebody that wants you jailed creates a rumor that you disrespected them. Therefore, you deserve to go to jail. Really? No, we're not going to play that game. It's not in this Republic of Texas. That whole thing in 16 needs to be completely struck out. It is jacked up. I'm sorry. When I read that, I'm like, what the world is going on here, and I'm trying to keep it clean because I was very offended by this. Yes.
Ken has put his hand up again. Ken, would you go ahead, please?
Yeah, once again, we have a topic, and the topic is amending the Constitution to make our affidavit lawful. Everything else has to be a discussion for another time. I yield.
Well, in an amendment to an affidavit, and people are swearing to this Constitution is jacked up. It needs to be revised, which is exactly why we're going over it, Ken. And I was asked to do this, so if you would like to do it or have somebody else do it, that's fine with me. I'm presenting some things that need to be revised. If you don't like what I'm proposing, let somebody else do it. Anybody else putting their hand up?
There, I have the floor. I think what Ken is trying to say to us is we've got a topic that we asked to be addressed, and it was actually asked of the Senate to address it. Okay? The Senate didn't seem to mind if you volunteered to do it.
Right.
But the fact is, it was asked to do that specific task. And I don't think the Vice President is wrong in asking that we stay on that subject.
We are on the subject.
But you're trying to address the whole.
Bits and pieces, tiny little bits and pieces. And sadly, my affidavit swearing to this Constitution, I'm going to have to withdraw if it stays as is because this is jacked up and needs to be changed. I'm swearing in my affidavit that I will honor this Constitution, and this Constitution is jacked up and needs revision. It's that simple. In that affidavit, we're swearing to this Constitution. Well, when you're swearing to a Constitution that's jacked up, the fundamental problem is the foundation. This Constitution needs revision. Simple. There's not a whole lot more that I have. But this particular issue in 16 needs to be completely removed. There's been other things that have been removed from this Constitution. So, can we move on?
I would suggest that if you're having problems with the oath that you took to that Constitution, that you write a letter to the President that says that I've taken this oath out of ignorance of knowing what the full content of that Constitution is, and I do not accept that certain provisions in there are applicable to my oath to that Constitution.
So in my separate oath and affirmation, I would list all the things that I will not swear to. Is that what you want me to do?
Well, what I'm saying to you, I don't know another way to do it because we'll get nothing done. We'll get nothing done. And the whole idea here is we're trying to get to where we do amend that whole Constitution, that we do make it right. And that's one of the reasons you're working with Jerry Lahr is to do that. And we prefer to have the people do it, not the government. Okay? So, you want to speak?
I've mentioned this before. We have a form on our website, and this is a county delegate confirmation of authority. The people are the ones that wrote this Constitution to start with. There was no Congress when they wrote it. And this here, you can make 2 delegates out of every county. We only have 36 counties. And we can call a convention, and that Bonnie could bring all her suggestions that need changing. Your Lord could bring all of his, and let those people straighten it up.
I thought that's what we were doing today. Like, you're just hearing the...
I'm talking about the people, not the Congress.
Did you want me to continue?
Yeah.
I'm proposing these
You can
changes,
turn, like,
that the people can make this decision on if they want to make the change. We've got people here,
we're a
right?
long ways from the majority right here.
Right. Well,
Okay.
Constitutional amendment is a 2-year process.
okay. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to continue to present what I thought I was here to do, which is to present the proposed changes? Yes or no?
okay.
Okay. And it's okay if you disagree with me. I'd like to hear if you do disagree with me. That's okay. You
No,
have.
I agree.
You have
Really,
free
a lot of
speech.
changes need to be done in that constitution.
Well, I say we not waste any time, but if any of what I'm saying makes sense, and you agree, then maybe we can take the steps to make those changes. Okay, moving on.
Now, how much are you addressing in there? Are you addressing the whole Constitution?
There's bits and pieces of it, Bruce. It's not that much.
So you're going to propose an amendment that's going to make a lot of changes in that, in a lot of different clauses. And I would think that the proper way to do an amendment,
It's separate amendments.
that's what I'm saying, it's going to end up having to be separate amendments. So
That's
you're going
right.
to have separate amendments.
It's got to be
And
separate.
then like bills and acts.
In
have to
in
come
that
one time.
case, in that case, we're really looking for one amendment to do what? Is to allow the lawfulness of our affidavit for a taxi. That's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Okay, so maybe they should not swear to this Constitution. Give me a copy of the affidavit that people are. Is that what we're going to amend and not this?
No. We're talking about having our Constitution make it lawful for us to have an affidavit for a taxi.
I'm
For an
confused.
affidavit to become a taxi.
Right.
There was nothing in the Constitution that provided for that.
Does somebody have an affidavit? Do you have an affidavit?
I got one right here. I'm looking at it. What part do you want to
Well,
talk
I'd
about?
actually
Right
see
there.
it. I mean,
There's your. It actually doesn't say much about the Constitution. It says the Declaration of Independence.
Mhm.
It doesn't say much about the Constitution, actually, if anything. Ken Barnett has his hand up again. Why don't you go ahead, Ken?
This is Mr. Barnett. That actually is not the current affidavit. That's an old form of the affidavit.
Oh, is it?
oh, Billy's giving me.
Okay.
If you go to the website, it has the current affidavit on it.
Okay.
I yield.
She's got the one she signed up. She didn't sign the new one, she signed the old one, right?
No, Glenn had brought up one that's an old one. You go to the website, you'll get the current one.
Yeah. But she didn't sign it. That's what I was saying. But she didn't sign it.
Now, the application for government office,
It's a
Yeah,
new
no,
one.
she
Something
signed it
different.
old.
Yeah.
here's the affidavit. Is this the one they want, the proposed one or the existing one?
If that's the affidavit that's
That's
on
our
the
existing.
website, that's the latest.
Okay.
Mr. Barnett again. As far as I understand, the things that need to be changed in the Constitution to make this lawful are in the part above. Item number one is the primary thing that needs to be addressed. Because if you read the Constitution says that if you've been here 6 months, you get all the privileges, not privileges, but rights of a Texian. And that's what we've changed in the affidavit. I yield.
So this is the proposed new affidavit.
And the reason that was addressed that way is because back in 1836, Texas was looking for any and everybody to move to Texas. They wanted to increase the population of Texas. And so they made that way. Okay? Times have changed a little bit.
Yeah, this does swear an oath to the Constitution. But 2 forms of ID, I mean, how can you require that?
Can't hear you.
You can't.
Actually, they can online, but at any rate, because my speaker and my microphone on my computer is on, so they're hearing me, because I've been talking to Mike. But the 2 forms of ID, I'm not sure how you can require that. I mean, at common law, you don't have ID, period. You have credentials. Anyways, I think Ken wants to say something. Why don't you go ahead, Ken?
Actually, it doesn't require that you have 2 forms of ID. It requires that you have 10 years of domicile on the land of Texas. Or, if you don't have that, you can use 2 forms of ID. We will accept it. We're not requiring it. We're requiring that you be here 10 years. But if you haven't been here 10 years, you can be here for 5 years. And if you have 2 forms of some kind of identification with a picture on it, we will accept that. I yield.
Well, we have a brand new guy who came to Ron Cloud's class last month, and he is a liberty lover, but he and his wife have moved here from Washington, Oregon, somewhere, and he's originally from Wisconsin, and he has filled out his affidavit, yet he has not lived on the Texas soil for 10 years. Will you accept him?
If he's been here for 5 years and has 2 forms of ID.
Well, he doesn't. Are we going to tell him, sorry, we're not interested? Go ahead, Billy.
I'm only hearing about half of what you're saying.
Oh, are you saying I need to talk or turn up your hearing
If
aid?
you're going to talk.
Talk louder or turn up? Go ahead.
The Constitution, as it's written, one we go by, the 1836 Constitution, says that if you've been on the land for 6 months and make appearance before a competent authority, then you have all the rights and privileges of a Texan. This new document, and that's what Mr. Brown has objection to, it says that you have to be here 10 years. What this was all about was, the reason this came about is because I pointed it out, that actually you could be a Texian in 6 months. But the same thing that happened in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia could happen here. The Russians said, we don't care if you're independent or not. We'll flood your country with Russians, and we'll vote any way we want to vote.
Right.
The 10-year time was supposed to be, you could be a Texian, but you couldn't vote until you'd been here and you assimilated and you had some skin in the game for 10 years. That's what it was all about. You don't have to live here 10 years to be a Texian. It was only to be able to vote. And there again, in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, they set the rule that when their country was restored, unless you were native born, you couldn't vote unless you had 10 years residence there, which makes sense.
Right.
You got some skin in the game. This got contorted here so that you have to be on the land for 10 years, and that's not, you don't have to be on the land 10 years to be a Texian. By our Constitution, you have to live here 6 months, and you're a Texian. By our Constitution, you live here 6 months, and you can vote. So if we have everybody from New York move down here, and 6 months later we have an election, and they're all Texians now because they're from New York, they can control the vote.
The communists could do it.
Anybody could do it. That was the whole purpose of having a waiting period, not on the application to be a Texian, but to be able to vote. And I can't remember where it is in the Constitution, you have to live there a certain amount of time before you can hold office. Do you know what it is, Mr.
I
Jardick?
don't recall just exactly where it's at.
Ken Barnett has his hand up again. If you're done, go.
Okay, how do you?
But even worse than somebody from California.
Go ahead, Ken.
This is Mr. Barnett. Mr. Ford is absolutely correct on that, and when we originally rewrote the affidavits, that's exactly what we tried to establish, and that got voted down by everybody. But that was the purpose of redoing the affidavit in the first place, was not to have you live here forever in order to become a Texian, but that you had to be assimilated to be able to exercise all the rights of a Texian.
Then maybe it'd be a good idea just to change those requirements for voting. Did you have something to say, President?
That was what we originally wrote, and unfortunately, it got voted down. Now that it's being brought up again, it would be a good idea to rewrite that and put it back in the form that we had it in, where you can be here for 6 months and become a Texian, but you have to be assimilated in order to be able to exercise the privilege of voting. And it was for exactly the reasons that Mr. Ford mentioned.
Well, that makes more sense than making them wait 10 years to be a Texian. Yes, Billy?
Well, Ed has something. Ed wants to speak.
Oh, okay.
It's the bill that created that document, I vetoed it. The reason I did, it was against the Constitution, and it could easily be done by amendment to change the wording in the Constitution and send it out to people and let them vote on it.
Okay, so are we changing the Constitution today?
Well, that's what we're looking at.
Right.
At least the amending the particular section from 6 months or the one on
Trying to.
on voting.
Yes, Billy?
See, I don't get to vote on anything.
Okay, so right now, the way our Constitution stands, if you've been here for 6 months and you declare before a competent authority that you want to be a Texian, you can be with all the rights and privileges of Texians. That's the way the Constitution is corrected today, currently. If you change any of that in our application, and you say, well, we want to make it so that you have to be here 5 years, you have to change the Constitution in order to do that. Otherwise, we take everybody as they are today, and they become Texians. 6 months later, they're Texians with the same rights and privileges that you have.
All right. So I want to bring something else to your attention. In section number 1, toward the end of that paragraph, it says, I am not wanted or under indictment for any crime on the lands of the Republic of Texas or on any foreign entity. My declaration is made without deception for invasion purposes. You know, we have got the state of that's prosecuting innocent people that have been, I think I've got a guy that I'm helping. The state's coming after him, civilly and criminally, and there's no crime. There's no injured party. And he worked for a company that was doing some funky things with investment money, and then they were lavishly living. The owners of the company that he worked for, and you've got the state coming after the employee who knew nothing about what his boss was doing. Gee, I'm so shocked the state would go after innocent people. But to me, this says I'm not wanted or under indictment. So to me, this is a due process violation. If you're saying I'm not wanted or under indictment, somebody can be under indictment for years pending trial. And we're saying, hey, if you're even accused by this dirty, racketeering state of Texas, dirty corporation that's a criminal enterprise that's trying to make slaves out of the people, that we're not going to accept them as Texians, that's also a due process violation, and it's jacked up that we would treat people that way. I think we should look at anybody in their particular situation, and if they have, a crime of violence or an accusation against them, we need to look at it. Because not every crime is a crime, you know that. Not every person that's been accused is guilty. There's people that are criminally prosecuted for innocent conduct all day long in the state because they're busy about making slaves and draining our trust accounts. It's all about racketeering. It's a racketeering, corrupt organization. And yet we're going to say indictment for any crime in the lands. Well, to me, that's a due process violation. An indictment does not mean somebody's guilty, and that needs to be removed from our affidavit.
Actually, no. This is an immigration document.
Okay.
Do you want to have criminals from Romania come here? Do you know they're criminals?
Hey, I would like to look at any accusation against anybody.
But you still have the
See if there's
you still have the place. If you do that, you still have the authority to either accept or reject that person.
Okay.
So
So
this
what
document-
happens if, just hear me out, Billy.
Okay.
I see it. I've seen how the turn of the century, in 1906, young black men were seized off the streets in Austin for a crime called loitering and put in the granite pit, digging out granite to build the Capitol, and they got free labor from those young black men who basically died out in the heat. And now there's a street called Convicts Hill where those young black men died. And what was their crime? Loitering. Really? They're walking from their house to their aunt's house around the corner, and yet they're seized up off the streets. And I'm not trying to offend anybody that's in the room, but this is offensive to me that our state has still, this is after the Civil War, is still promoting slavery, because that's what it is. And if somebody comes from Romania and they're criminally prosecuted for loitering, you know what? That's not a criminal to me. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's just not. So you can label them a criminal all day long, but if they've injured no one, they're not a criminal. They should not have an indictment. They should not have a prosecution. And we should have the right to try them underneath common law and set them free. They should be able to come to us as the go-to people to make things straight with this dirty state that we live in. That's making slaves out of every one of us. And by the way, it's not just black people that are targeted for slavery. It's every single person. If you're Latino, if you're Chinese, if you're white, they don't care anymore. It affects every single one of us. Can be targeted for criminal prosecution, and your life is over. Trust me, I see it all day long. I'm in the trenches trying to set people free. Yes, Glenn.
I gotta say I have to agree with Bonnie. I mean, that's what people do, is if they get indicted in one country, they have extradition treaties, and countries can extradite people. But other than that, you go to a foreign country, and if there's no extradition treaty, murderers do that all the time. And you can start over. And
There's all sorts of, I agree that, I mean, in the current system, there's no justice in the current system. It's all a kangaroo court. You know, don't get me going. I do a lot of my YouTube videos because of that. And so, even if they do hold their show trial in their kangaroo court, you know, don't get me going. At any rate, I don't think that we should be asking people those kinds of questions. If they have, it's a foreign jurisdiction.
This Mike, may I speak?
Yeah, there's a couple people that have their hands up, and and I was gonna, you know, Mike wants to speak, and actually I think Ken had his hand up too to speak. So I think
Ken was before me.
right. So I think Ken should be allowed to speak, and Billy's in the middle of trying to speak too. But we'll let Ken speak, and then we'll let Mike speak, and then Billy can continue what he was saying. I guess is that's okay, Billy. He's fine with that. So go ahead, Ken.
Mr. Ford was ahead of me, so I will yield to him first.
Well, he was speaking, and he was talking to Bonnie, and they were, and so you know, I don't know. Go ahead, Ken, if you want to speak. Now's the time.
Okay. This topic was actually addressed during the rewriting of the affidavit, and the reason that it's written in there the way it is because no one could figure out how to write it so that another foreign entity, talking about an indictment for a crime from a foreign entity, we really don't want foreigners, per se, that have done crimes to be here. But on the other hand, how do you rewrite this so that someone who is on the land of Texas that was indicted for something that isn't a crime, how do you differentiate between those two in verbiage?
I have a suggestion.
This, Mike, if you read this, it states that I'm not wanted or indicted for any crime on the lands of the Republic of Texas. That's not the state of Texas corporate. On the lands, that's where common law is. That's not statutory law.
Read on, Mike. It says,
That's exactly how this reads.
no.
But I agree. I don't think it's. I agree with Glenn and Bonnie. The corporate statutory courts are nothing but criminal enterprises. I mean, why do we give them any credence at all?
Yeah.
Right,
Joe.
because it does say
But
on the
but
lands of the
does-
Republic or any foreign entity. Well, the foreign entity
Right.
could be the state of
Right.
Texas,
Right.
right? So,
The state of is a foreign entity as far as the Republic of
That-
Texas.
well,
That is in there.
Then I think it needs to be. I know you don't want to hear this, but I think that does not work.
I agree.
I agree. The or any other foreign entity needs to be removed. And where it says, I am not wanted or under indictment, I would propose that we change that to I am not accused of a crime of violence. Isn't that what we're worried about? We don't want violent people coming in, smacking you over the head, busting your nose, whatever. Or we could add another clause, violence or dishonesty. But that can be a false accusation too. People can be accused of dishonesty that, like, we have an RT guy now, I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but he was accused of dishonesty when it was not him. It was the employer of his company that was doing dishonest things with investment funds, and yet the state of is accusing him and saying that he should have known what his employer was doing. Well, hello, what employee on this planet goes into the employer's offices and says, let me rummage through your finances? And the employer says, oh, okay, employee, here you go, here's my books. I'm sorry. No employer is going to do that to an employee, especially if they have something to cover up. It makes absolutely no sense. But yet this man right now is facing criminal and civil prosecution in the state of. So again, it's an accusation. It's an accusation. If he goes to trial, they will find a way to find him guilty so they can drain his trust account. They will manufacture evidence. They will pay false witnesses. They will cherry pick the jury with a pre-planned outcome.
They will withhold
because that's what's
exculpatory
going. They will
evidence.
withhold exculpatory evidence. They will have a prosecutor make false statements in front of a jury to spin the facts to make sure that that man is found guilty. This is what's going on in our courts right now. So an accusation in the fraud world is almost 100% guarantee because the judge is in on it, and the prosecutor's in on it, and the state's in on it, and the appellate courts are in on it, and nobody's going to overturn a wrongful conviction because that's what's going on. Yes, Ed?
The president wants to speak.
Last month, I presented a program, a plan that we should look at. If we ever get this thing going, we're going to have a plan. Right? Part of this plan that I read to everybody, immediately clear cases through common law courts, any Texas-born or domiciled Texian kidnapped and held as a federal prisoner in North America. Then number 6, immediately release all prisoners held in captivity, federal or state, for non-violent crimes, such as the fraudulent IRS or any case where no other living soul was hurt physically or financially and has not damaged any individual's property. I read that to everybody.
I like it. Let's put it in here. Let's put that in the affidavit. That's great.
Okay.
I think that gets to the point
That's
of
part of
what
the
we're
plan.
trying. Yeah, that cuts to the chase of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Mike wants to speak.
The problem is this is, Congress has been, back to what took 6 months to get this document passed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little frustrating now to be at this point, but so I don't want to.
Might I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
If we remove the end of that sentence or any other foreign entity and left the rest of it in there, the thing that we're interested, because if you're on the lands of the Republic of Texas and you're wanted or under indictment on the lands of the Republic of Texas, it's because you committed a real crime. Everywhere else, you can be held for committing no crime at all.
Correct.
And so if the or any other foreign entity was taken off of there, yeah, we don't want criminals from other countries either, but if you took that off of there, I think it would suit the purpose.
Well, there's a problem with the I am not wanted or under indictment, and I think that phrase should be changed to I am not wanted for harming another soul. And that's simple, it's crisp, it's to the point, and harm can be economic or physical. Right?
I think also that people might find it confusing and think that, because it could be thought, I mean, some of us even today just thought that this could include, something in the foreign criminal corporations. And so I like what Bonnie's saying better.
I agree with what Bonnie just said. To replace that sentence with what she just said. But that's not my vote. I can't vote.
Thank you, Ken. Billy, do you have something?
Billy Ford wants to speak, and Ronnie wanted to speak, or do you still want to speak?
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Okay.
Please, Mr. Pratt, go first.
The thing that I wanted to say was regarding having criminals over here from other countries. The worst place for a career criminal was in common law. because that butt is nailed.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's death penalty.
If somebody comes over here and they're running from a crime, and it's discovered by the fellows around here, they're going to investigate. They're going to say, well, I wonder what that sucker did, you know, and they're going to go get those people, and then it's not the de facto anymore. It's those people come after that man to man. And then a jury decides what happens to him. You know, and that's the worst possible
Common law is
thing
very severe,
that can
too.
happen. A child molester can have a millstone thrown around his neck and dumped into the sea. So the common law is the worst place for a criminal to want to run an
yeah, and they're not going to want to come to
Ideal.
a place where there's free people, because you're right. Common law is very severe. You know, it's in the de facto that they want them free to go and commit some more crimes because it makes them so much business. Anyways, Billy Ford.
Okay, back to the point. On the affidavit and declaration, the 10-year period wasn't, and this is to vote on there. You couldn't be a Texan unless you had 10 years, but actually the 10-year waiting period wasn't so that you couldn't vote at all. It was to vote in a referendum if Texas was to ever become independent. That's the whole point of this. Because if you're a Texian, you've been here 6 months and you can vote for your senator, your representatives, your sheriff, or your coroner, or whoever else, the Constitution allows for that. The only thing the Constitution doesn't allow for is that waiting period for a referendum. We could change that later on, but right now, the way the Constitution is and the way our acceptance of people is if we have a referendum to become independent, how many people do you know here that would be wanting to become independent?
A lot of them.
Oh,
A lot. Everybody here in this room would be. Not everybody in Texas, though.
Right.
There's a lot of people in Texas that do not want to be independent. They want to be part of.
The union.
So they can flood us with a whole bunch of people to defeat the vote.
From California or Ohio or Louisiana, it doesn't make any difference. They don't
So
have
then we
government
need to
under it.
spell that out. We need to spell that out.
that's
Okay.
the whole reason for that thing.
So, but we need to spell that out.
But
They
they
gotta
don't.
have
But they
10
don't.
years to vote in a referendum for republic independence.
Okay, then
It has to say that.
that makes all the sense. That's what that was all about in the first place.
Right.
And the application could be very simple then, and people,
Right.
do you want to be a Texian? It's going to take you 10 years to be able to vote in that referendum, and you know it in the beginning,
Right.
up front. And I yield.
I think there's a little bit more to that, okay? The concern was, with all the nonsense, for example, that's going on in New York and in California, there's a lot of people that are leaving those states and they're coming to Texas. Okay? They're coming to Texas. But they're still coming with that New York mindset. They're still coming with that California mindset. And they can come here and they can take over this government just by a little group of them becoming Texians, and then they can vote somebody in, and they can vote another one in, and they can vote others in. And they can take this over, where they have a majority in here that can change what we're trying to do.
We're in agreement with you.
Yeah.
Billy said it well.
So, okay, so then they just can't vote, but they can,
It's just a vote issue. They can join, but they can't vote.
right,
Right.
okay.
Okay. Can we get back to the Constitution?
So we need to spell it out though, just can't vote. They can be here and participate, have all the rights and privileges, just can't vote. So it needs to say that.
And most people that want to become Texians have been on Texas probably all their life on the land of Texas. So it's not an impediment.
Anyways,
Okay.
okay, and so then how do we amend the Constitution to satisfy that requirement? Just that simple one issue, and there's a lot of things that need to be amended. But just to that satisfy that one simple issue
we could actually just make an amendment that says that the right to vote is determined by something like that. Just make a one amendment that say just one sentence. Have to be on the land for 10 years or 5 years with or something like that.
Well, underneath the Texas Constitution on page 4.
You could put something like 10 years or as determined by the executive branch and leave the rest of it open. Let the executive branch decide. Anyway.
Well, we can add it. There's an amendment on page 3 where it says every living soul having declared domicile on the lands of Texas shall be a Texian citizen, sovereign, possessing all rights and responsibilities as described and sealed forever in the People's Declaration of Rights, except for the ability to vote, and voting shall be accepted by them after being domiciled on the land for 10 years.
Where's
So
it?
you
Which
just
page
add
3?
it on page 3 where it says as amended
Section.
by Amendment Article 1.
Well, I'm on page 3. There's no amended article on page 3. Huh? This is the one that you gave me.
No,
Oh,
she's in the Constitution.
this is the Constitution. This is the 1836 Constitution.
Oh,
Okay, well, it's right next to section 12.
There's
It's just above section 12.
right there.
Section
That's all on page 1. This is the blue right here, which is page 1.
12. I've got it on my, I've got it on page 4, my bad.
Oh, there we go. That's why. There we go. Oh, look at
Right
that.
here. There we go. Every living soul having declared, and then you can put except the ability, because it says sovereign possessing all rights and responsibilities as declared and sealed forever in the People's Declaration of Rights. And that's where we can do another amendment and say, except for
The right to vote.
the right to vote must be,
We'll have to figure out some
Right.
wording, but so then
It's
we can
not-
just
it's-
add
yeah,
some
it's not
simple
written.
wording.
Add and
Requires a
accept.
10-year tenure.
yeah,
Right.
the right except for the ability to vote unless, which is the exception,
We'd have to figure out some wording, but that's not something we want to talk about here, but
We
that
could-
would be.
that would be a great place to add it.
That would
Because
be-
it is saying
sure.
every living soul has the rights and duties, right?
Right.
Except for the ability to vote,
Which requires
Which-
10 years
Right.
on the land of Texas.
Right.
Or some shorter period as decided by the executive branch.
and then you've
Or
got,
other requirements
and then
as.
you've got a little discriminatory issues that could be,
Well, it gives them the flexibility to do 5 years in ID, or, because you don't want to say ID in the Constitution.
right. Well, I also don't like the thought that the executive branch can, at its leisure, do willy-nilly
Well, but
things
you're
that
right.
could look discriminatory. Yes, sir.
that time period in there is for 10 years. Actually, Lithuania started out at 10 years, and they backed down to 5 years, and then I think it was 3 years. So, you see, it became, as people understood,
Could be amended later, right?
it's, when they got started, that's what they started out at that, but then they decided later on that it wouldn't be for a period of 10 years, it'd be for a period of 3 years.
Right.
So even in 3 years, you could have a lot of skin in the game in 3 years. If you've been born on the land of Texas, you've been here all your life, you've been here 10 years, or you've been here 3 years. It's not hard to do.
Right.
And there again, the only vote that you wouldn't be able to participate in is the vote for independence, which is called the referendum.
Well, it's.
Maybe you want to go deeper than that. That's kind
Well,
of
if you
up to-
want to keep from people influencing other votes,
Well, that's why we're thinking about any kind of voting, but anyways.
Well, I would like to make a suggestion that we break for lunch as it's 1 o'clock and if people are bringing it to my attention that they're hungry, that we can take a lunch break and come back and pick it up where we left off. Yes? Is that good?
That's good to me.
Do we need a vote on that?
Bruce, do we want
I
to
don't know.
vote for
I don't know.
adjourn, recess for lunch or something?
I don't know, is John or I in charge here?
I'll make that motion.
I second.
Let's go ahead and break for lunch. I mean, people were walking out there. In fact, our speaker walked out.
He's just in the other. He's visiting.
We break for lunch at what time?
It's 1 o'clock.